everyone, welcome back to the Whiskey Pot. I hope you're having a good day today. My name is Danny and today I'm continuing my series about the whiskey regions of Scotland, and today we're going to talk about the biggest one by far, and that is the Highlands. To celebrate the occasion, I am going to be drinking a dram of Edredau 10 and we're going to go through some interesting things about the Highlands, some bottles that I recommend you try, some myths that are misunderstood about the Highlands, some flavour categories. It's a very vast category, so there's a lot to break down, but I guess let's get right into it. Now, whiskey in the Highlands goes back a very long way, but for a long time, Highlands was pretty much the home of illegal distilling. It was remote, it was very rugged, it was full of small farming communities, and that made it the perfect location to hide illegal stills. It was the perfect place to avoid the taxman. Whiskey back then would have been very different from the style of Highland whiskey now. It would have been very rough and fiery and quite heavily peated, and that was just the style of how Highland whiskey was back then until the 1823 Excise Act, which made legal distilling kind of viable for people, and that changed the style of how Highland whiskey was to be. At that point, once whiskey could legally be made at scale in a practical way, the coastal distilleries kind of emerged first because that was the easiest way in those days to transport whiskey by sea, especially before the railway made it easier to transport whiskey by land within Scotland. And some of the best Highland distillery stories and journeys come from around that coast area. Oban was founded in 1794 and the whole sort of town and village kind of grew around the Oban distillery. The distillery is now stuck between the harbour and a cliff. It's very tiny, but it's a very iconic distillery, the Oban distillery. Old Pulteney is another one. It's right up in Wick, and it kind of emerged the same time as the fishing scene was emerging. So that very coastal, salty, maritime vibe became part of its identity, and the whiskey itself has a very briny, salty sea air note that it's very famous for. The Highlands is obviously a very large area, so different areas of the Highlands have different flavour profiles. A lot of the other whiskey regions have very distinctive styles that they're kind of known for and famous for, but because the Highlands is so big, it massively varies by region. Here's the easiest, simplest breakdown as to what whiskey from each area of the Highlands tastes like. So you have the coastal areas, so this is something like Old Pulteney or Oban, and these often taste very coastal, you guessed it. Yes, they have that salty, breezy taste. They have a little bit of citrus on them usually. They taste very fresh. These are the kind of whiskies that I personally like to drink when I visit somewhere like the beach or I'm on holiday, because it's kind of self-explanatory. They are very coastal and they just work well with being by the sea for me. When you move to the Northern Highlands, the flavour profile you get is often quite waxy, quite full-bodied. If you've ever had whiskey from Clynelish, this is probably the clearest example of that. It was originally built on the Duke of Sutherland's estate, and eventually it became very famous for that very sort of waxy, textured style whiskey. When you move east towards the Eastern Highlands, these whiskies tend to be a little brighter, a little bit fresher, often quite clean and almost grassy tasting. If you've ever had whiskey from Glengoyne, which if you haven't, I highly recommend you try it. It's a very underrated distillery, but they have that very clean, grassy, bright freshness in all their whiskey. It's the kind of whiskey that's very sort of easy to sip, easy to drink, easy, you don't have to think about it too much. It's the kind of whiskey that I tend to really enjoy drinking in the summer when it's really nice and hot, unlike today, which although it looks really nice, I can guarantee you it's absolutely freezing in the UK. In the Southern Highlands, the style tends to be a little more honeyed and soft, often malty. Again, really, really approachable, nothing too in your face. Deanston's a really good example, or Tullibardine as well. Deanston is in a converted cotton mill and they use really long fermentations, which gives them that really honeyed, malty, full of character style. A really good distillery, again, underrated. Just that soft style, almost like you're drinking a hug. That's such a cringy thing to say, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The Western Highlands tend to be a little bit earthier, sometimes a little bit of peat in there. Still sweet, but they tend to be a little bit herbal, sometimes leathery notes, things like that. Think Ardnamurchan or Ben Nevis. Some of Ben Nevis's bottles showcase that style really well. I do want to go through some Highland whiskies that I would really recommend that you try, starting with this one that I'm drinking, which is Edredour 10. Edredour is located in the Southern Highlands. It's known for very sweet, sherried style whiskies. They're known for small scale hand production. I think they're the smallest traditional distillery in Scotland. I'm going to give you a list of some whiskies that I think you should try first if you are looking to try something with Highland style. I will say that the Edredour, although it's a great whiskey and it's the one I'm drinking right now, it's not the best place to start if you're trying to try that very typical Highland style, because it's unusually sherried for a Highland whiskey. Glencadam 10 is a really clean, classic Highland style. It's very, very bright and fresh, almost lemony a little bit. Just incredibly easy to drink. If you want something that feels properly old school Highland but isn't going to be sort of weighed down by peat or heavy sherry cask or anything like that, Glencadam 10 is a really, really nice way to taste that. Deanston 12, this has such a lovely weight to it. Deanston uses long fermentations, as I mentioned, which means you get that really malty, soft kind of character. If you want a whiskey that is kind of full-bodied but it doesn't feel heavy, and I think that's quite a hard balance to get, Deanston 12 could be a great bottle for you to try. Old Pulteney 12. Now I, as I mentioned, always drink Old Pulteney when I go on holiday or when I'm by the sea. Old Pulteney 12 is such a nice introduction to maritime coastal style whiskey because there's no smokiness to it. It's just that salty element of sea air, sea breeze. It's really crisp tasting, a little bit citrusy, kind of briny, quite a savoury whiskey, but with still a little sweet note running through it. Really fantastic if you haven't tried it. Clynelish 14. This is such a good whiskey to understand what all the fuss is about for the Clynelish famous waxy texture. Yeah, it's slightly coastal, slightly minerally, but still really nice and elegant. Yeah, if you like texture on whiskey, or if you kind of haven't understood what textured whiskey is and you want something that will really scream it in your face, Clynelish 14 is a good one to go because it's one of the most distinctive textured whiskies. If you've tried it, you'll know what I mean. And Ardnamurchan AD. This is kind of an all-rounder. It's sweet, it has a little bit of smoke, it has coastal influence. It's kind of modern Highland whiskey but done really well. It's a really nice all-rounder with still a good amount of personality. So there we have it. That is the Highlands. It's Scotland's biggest region and definitely its most diverse by far. Once you break it down, I hope it kind of makes more sense to you. It's a region with a lot of great gems of whiskey inside. I think that the next episode is going to be Campbelltown, which is, as you know, an exciting one. I would love to hear in the comments your favourite Highlands whiskey. What's your go-to that you love to drink? If you haven't already, make sure that you have clicked the subscribe button to The Whiskey Pour and click the little bell so that you get a notification every time a new video is posted. I hope you have a good rest of your day. I will see you on the next one. Follow for more.